tens of thousands of people taking exactly the same class through edX, which is the nonprofit MOOC that Harvard and MIT are running. Exactly the same lectures, exactly the same problem sets, exactly the same tests. And I've actually been taking the class. It runs about 3 weeks behind the normal class. And so sometimes if you come to our offices and you see my door closed and you see me like frowning looking at my computer, it's because I'm spinning around a 3D model of a protein, trying to figure out how these different pieces put together to do these problem sets that are very, very hard. Harder for me than the annoyingly smart freshmen at MIT that I see on my... I didn't have to move to Cambridge. I didn't have to run an admissions tournament. It took me less than a minute to sign up for this class. And the price is $0. It's free for me. And so what we are seeing now is a change, not just an educational change, not just a change in opportunity, but a change in the economics of higher education.
We're offering better instruction at lower cost right now, and we're using every tool imaginable. It turns out there's tools vastly superior to MOOCs. MOOCs are basically the Paul Samuelson of the past, now alive in front of me face to face. That's fantastic. I can integrate that into anything. And if somebody wants to give that to me for free, I'm going to take it because it's less expensive than the textbook. And so there's no permanency to that particular economic model. So the notion of the MOOC being the technological platform, it turns out it isn't. It turns out that the technological platform that we're finding the greatest traction around is what we call adaptive learning, which is an interactive tool that's allowing us to measure the actual individualized learning experience of every single student that we have in ways in which we can customize the learning experience for them, particularly at the general education level, which is where some of these classes fit in. That then empowering our faculty and freeing our faculty to put more intensive energy into the broader learning experiences or the critical thinking or analytical problem solving experiences. So we're seeing that what's happening is that the press, and this sometimes happens, is they're grossly oversimplifying. They're just saying, oh, well, I've got these professors from Princeton that want to give their courses away for free. That'll surely help the proletariat students attending the public universities in Georgia and Arizona and the non-coastal regions of California, and that will then somehow permit us to do what we really need to do, which is to get this idea of public higher education off the taxpayer's mind.
That's always been the way we thought about technology in higher education. We assume the university, and then we say, what happens if we add technology? How much would that cost, and what would we get from it? But when we assume the university, we're essentially assuming an organizational model that was developed 130 years ago or so. All the really interesting conversations that we've had in the United States about what higher education institutions should look like happened between about 1870 and 1890. And that's when we developed the model we have now. Credits, deans, provosts, departments, but it really has not changed very much since the end of the 19th century. So this augmentation mentality assumes all of these arrangements, many of which have become very, very expensive, many of which have never worked very well over that entire period of time. And then we say, can we add some technology to it, and what would that get us? I think we're at the point where the question is now flipped upside down. I think the burden of proof is on what do we get by buying people to add to the increasingly rich base of technology-based education that is growing and growing and growing. And people are trying to answer this question. So a few years ago, William Bowen, an economist who began his career working on some of these actually fundamental questions of labor productivity, went on to become president of Princeton University, became very interested in this question, had always been kind of a skeptic about technology. But like any good scholar said, well, I'm going to conduct research to answer this question. So he took a class, a regular college class, and then they took randomly assigned students to either a regular college class or a hybrid technological person class. So basically cutting the amount of the labor costs by 50%. Regular class, randomly assigned one group of students to regular class, other group of the students, think of it as half people, half technology, 50% less. The result was that there was no difference whatsoever in student learning. And that was true across income categories. So this was not the case that the lower income students and the students that came in with the lower grades, the vulnerable students, got a worse education than the students who come in with the resources. Actually, everybody did exactly the same in the class where we had half as many people. Well, people is what we pay for in higher education. And so the open question to me is, if 50% costs us nothing, and by the way, no one is doing that really, where do people actually add value?
I think we're probably in agreement on this notion that the universities, and I think we are an exception to this in general, the universities are rigid, structured, unmoving bodies, unable to think about their own adaptability. So what we're trying to do in the 48th state of the lower 48, that is the last of the frontiers, and it really is that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to, in a sense, birth what we call an adaptive university, one that is consuming technology, using technology, adapting, responding to society and so forth. And we do that with, to some extent, at our own peril. I guess where you and I would disagree is I'm unwilling to throw the whole baby out, that is the whole concept of the university out, and just say, well, there's just going to be a handful of universities. They're going to be unscalable, and we're going to go to the geniuses that are at those universities, and we're going to project out their genius, and we're all going to be fine.
And I want to be very clear about this. I do not think that the future of higher education is most students sitting in their parents' basements at a computer in a pair of sweatpants in isolation learning that way. I think that in the future, people will go to places that will be part of authentic learning communities. I think that they will learn from one another. No, I mean, I think that there will be an integration of residential life and social life and academic life, and there will be learning resources. There will be older, wiser people there to help them. But you can have all those things and not have all the many things that are part of the American Research University. So we need to make a distinction between our kind of romanticized notion of the best of what that can be with the reality of what is out there.
So the romanticization, so we're in agreement. What we have to do is we've got to get institutions of higher education to stop attempting to gain status against each other, and then granting status, not upon graduation, they grant status upon entry. It's bizarre.
What I don't see is any plausible theory of how we actually get them to do that. The question I think we ought to ask ourselves is not, is Arizona State fantastic and what you've done fantastic? It's, there are 5,000 colleges and universities in the United States. How many Michael Crows are